The following video is intended for mature audiences. It contains horror elements, adult themes, and language that might not be suitable for younger viewers. Welcome to the Southern Underworld, your place for original horror, sci-fi, and thriller content where the stories are always written with heart. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. We'd love to know in what part of the world you are watching and what is your favorite horror movie of all time. Thank you for watching and enjoy the video. The sun sank behind the rugged peak surrounding Campfire Lake, casting a warm glow upon its crystal-clear waters. Lily and her friends had set up camp on the shore, building a cozy fire pit out of rocks and collecting branches for roasting sticks. The towering pine trees that encircled their campsite whispered in the gentle breeze, providing a sense of seclusion. As they sat around the crackling fire, their faces illuminated by its dancing flames, the sweet aroma of roasting marshmallows filled the air. They laughed and shared stories, their voices mingling with the distant call of loons resounding across the lake. The scent of wood smoke and fresh pine needles enveloped them, creating a sensory experience unlike any other. As the sun dipped below the horizon, a sharp drop in temperature sent shivers down Lily's spine. She pulled her woolen blanket tighter around her shoulders and moved closer to the fire. Despite the warmth, she couldn't shake off the uneasy feeling that someone or something was lurking in the shadows, watching their every move. A sudden ripple broke the surface as they gazed out at the serene lake. The group's attention was drawn to a mist rising from the water, slowly enveloping them in its chilly embrace. Whispers, like the echo of lost souls, swirled around them. A loud splash shattered the silence of the night, causing them to jump in fear. From the other side of the lake emerged a mysterious figure, her silhouette shrouded in mist and water. She resembled a siren, with long dark hair that floated around her pale face, giving her an ethereal appearance. The depths of her vacant stare seemed to pierce through anyone who dared to meet her gaze, seemingly hiding secrets of the underworld. With each step she took, the water rippled and danced a hypnotic pattern around her, as if she held a mystical power over the waves. Lily and her friends stood transfixed, unable to tear their eyes away from the enchanting creature who seemed to have emerged from another world. An unsettling mix of fear and fascination captured them, the girls dangerously drawn to the captivating woman. The figure reached out, her arms bony, skeletal branches that beckoned the girls closer. The apparition's chilling touch drifted on the breeze, the sensation of icy fingers trailing along their skin. A raspy whisper slithered from her lips as she spoke of promises to take them down into the murky depths of the lake, where their screams would be swallowed by the water's embrace. The initial awe quickly faded as Lily and her friends were snapped back into reality. They shrieked and scrambled to their feet, eager to escape from the unknown entity that lurked beneath the lake's surface. Without wasting any time, they hastily packed up their belongings. They sprinted back to the comfort and security of civilization, making a solemn promise to never return to Campfire Lake again. Lily emerged from the depths of Campfire Lake, her spirit forever shattered. No amount of therapy or medication erased the haunting whispers that followed her every step, leaving her in a perpetual state of terror. She lived the rest of her days on edge, constantly looking over her shoulder for any sign of the darkness that had touched her at the lake. The abandoned mineshaft jutted out from the hillside, its entrance a gaping maw covered in twisted vines and shrouded in a thick fog. John and his friends, fueled by adrenaline and teenage curiosity, decided to explore its depths. They brought flashlights, their beams cutting through the darkness as they descended into the shadows. The air grew colder with each step, and an eerie silence enveloped them. Distant drips of water echoed off the walls, and their footsteps thudded against the damp ground. As they delved deeper, John's gut tightened with unease. Shadows seemed to dance just outside of their vision, and a tingle ran down his spine. But his friends were too caught up in their bravado to notice. Then the flashlight beams fell upon something that made their blood run cold. Strange symbols glowed on the rough stone walls, etched with precision and radiating otherworldly energy. Their chatter turned to hushed whispers as they continued deeper, the symbols growing more frequent and complex. A sense of dread settled over the friends as they realized they had stumbled upon something ancient and possibly dangerous. And as they reached a chamber filled with intricate patterns that seemed to writhe and pulsate in the light, they knew they should have never entered this place. When they stepped onto the unstable ground, John and his friends heard a low rumbling beneath their feet. Without warning, the solid ground beneath them crumbled and gave way, sending them tumbling down into a seemingly endless abyss of darkness. The air rushed past their faces as they fell, the only sound coming from their panicked screams echoing off the walls of the cavern. It was as if they were being swallowed by the very earth itself, with no end in sight. The cold, damp air clung to their skin, and the darkness enveloped them, leaving them disoriented and afraid. Time stood still as they continued their descent, unsure of what awaited them at the bottom. They landed hard on the rocky ground of a cavern, with the weight of their bodies crushing against one another. John's flashlight shattered on impact, leaving them in complete darkness. When the group regained their senses and turned on the remaining flashlights, they saw that they were surrounded by piles of human bones and remnants of clothing. The sickening stench of death invaded their senses, assaulting their nostrils and filling their lungs with a putrid, rotting odor. A gruesome scene lay before them, sending shivers down their spines and turning their stomachs with its horrifying reality. Their screams echoed through the cavern, but there was no one to hear them. Then a deafening roar pierced the silence, and it became clear that they were not alone in this underground graveyard. Emerging from the darkness were twisted, inhuman figures with elongated claws that glinted menacingly under the dim light. Their eyes blazed with a crimson fury as they charged toward John and his friends, their hunger for fresh flesh evident in every wild, animalistic movement. John's heart raced as he desperately swung a broken piece of rock, trying to fend off the monstrous creatures that surrounded him. He felt their hot breath on his skin and their sharp claws scraping against his body. In the distance, he heard his friends' screams as they were dragged away one by one into the darkness, leaving only a faint echo behind. Would he be next? John stood his ground, his muscles coiled and ready for whatever might come at him. He was determined not to back down, no matter what obstacles he might face. His primal instincts took over, fueled by an unrelenting desire to survive. He knew the odds were stacked against him, but he was not going down without a fight. Despite his valiant efforts, the creatures overwhelmed him. They clawed and gnashed at his flesh until all that remained in the cavern was a pool of blood and silence. As the darkness devoured him, John's eyes widened in terror as he watched the ancient symbols on the walls glow with a sinister light. The cavern was a doorway into another world, a realm of unfathomable horrors that threatened to consume his very soul. He attempted to scream, but the sound was trapped in his throat, and he could only watch in horror as the secrets of the abandoned mine were revealed before him. The abandoned mine lay silent, but the darkness spoke to John, taunting him as he struggled to stay conscious. He was no match for the sinister force lurking in the deep. As his vision blurred and his body went limp, he realized that this was his demise. The darkness that hides in the shadows had claimed him, making him its latest prey. As the sun dipped below the horizon, its final rays cast a fiery glow over the sunken valley. Megan adjusted her helmet cam to capture the breathtaking scene, while Jax and Riley watched in awe. The trio stood on the edge of the treacherous pit that had captivated them since they were children, now fueling their popular YouTube series called Edge of Nowhere. With a mixture of both fear and excitement, they eagerly prepared to descend into the depths of the sinkhole. Their headlamps illuminated the darkness as they descended the rocky walls, their fingers gripping the unforgiving surface. Intricate murals adorned the stone walls, remnants of an ancient civilization. Even Megan, known for her thrill-seeking nature, couldn't shake off the feeling of unease that crept over her. As they explored further into the valley, Jax's voice echoed through the quiet as he stumbled upon a grouping of strange markings. Riley perceived the slight shift as the ground trembled beneath their feet. Despite the unnerving discovery, the allure of viral fame was too strong for the adventurous vloggers to resist, so they continued in search of more thrilling footage for their fans. Jax eagerly led the expedition deeper into the cavern. Megan followed closely behind, her steps faltering as she attempted to hide her fear. Riley, always focused through the lens of his camera, captured every moment of their descent into the unknown. As they ventured further, the ancient murals on the walls grew increasingly threatening, depicting an evil entity awakening and unleashing its wrath on all who dared to disturb its slumber. The once subtle tremors now rocked the ground like a beating drum, building to a deafening crescendo. A sudden crack sounded as the earth split wide open, releasing a murky fog that choked their every breath. A guttural groan echoed from within the fissure. Panic consumed the group as they rushed toward the distant speck of light at the other end of the valley. And then the creature appeared, a hideous mass of shadows. Its obsidian skin reflected the dim light, giving off an otherworldly brilliance. Its long limbs twisted and jerked, seemingly independent of one another, as it emerged from the divide in the ground. The creature's jaws were a menacing sight, lined with razor-sharp teeth. Terrified, Riley stumbled and fell. He hit the ground with a thud, his hand still clutching the camera as he raised it to his eye. Through the lens, he saw the monstrous figure approaching. His heart pounded with fear, not for his safety, but for what he knew was about to happen. Megan and Jax frantically shoved past Riley, their hearts thundering as they scrambled for an escape that simply did not exist. Riley watched helplessly through the camera lens as the creature's jaws opened wide. With lightning speed, it lunged forward and snapped Megan into its grasp. Her screams pierced the silence as she struggled against its iron grip. Jax came to a sudden and horrifying stop, his eyes widening in terror as he witnessed the brutal attack on his closest friend. With each swing of its powerful limbs, the entity tore Megan's fragile body apart, her screams reverberating through the area until they were abruptly cut off with a sickening snap. With a careless flick, the creature tossed her lifeless body aside, leaving only shreds of torn flesh and fabric behind. Turning its bloodthirsty gaze to Jax, it bared its jagged teeth, extinguishing his existence with a swift swipe of its massive claws. The live broadcast captured the chaos and horror as it unfolded in the sunken valley. The camera shaking as it attempted to capture the entity, its barbaric screams piercing the cavern. Megan and Jax's sobs echoing off the valley walls as the creature ended their young lives, Riley's shaking hands fumbling for his camera, raising it in one brave and final act of defiance, determined to document their last moments. Suddenly, the screen went black, leaving darkness behind and a chilling tribute to the vloggers who had sought fame but found their demise. The valley was sealed off, but snippets of the footage went viral on the internet, a haunting tale whispered in the agonizing cries and traces of blood, forever immortalized in digital remembrance. It stood as a dire warning and grim reminder that there are lines that should never be crossed. Beyond those boundaries lies a world of unspeakable terrors, waiting to devour anyone foolish enough to pass. Tenzin stumbled out of the blizzard, his body a tattered shell struggling against the relentless grasp of Mount Kanchenjunga. The icy winds whipped against his frozen skin, threatening to snatch him back into the blinding white abyss. His mind was a jumbled mess of memories shattered like broken glaciers and buried deep in the recesses of his consciousness. The faces of his lost companions, Maya, with her infectious laughter, and Marley, the unflappable Sherpa, taunted him from the edges of his thoughts, their final moments replaying on an endless loop. Fueled by guilt and an insatiable need for closure, Tenzin had embarked on a solitary journey back to the site of the devastating avalanche. Each step up the treacherous slopes was a grueling battle against his amnesia, a tireless effort to unearth the truth. But the mountains seemed determined to thwart him at every turn. The wind roared, carrying fragments of memories in its merciless gusts. Maya's piercing scream was swallowed by the deafening roar of snowfall, and Marley's steady hand slipped from his grip as they both disappeared into the swirling white oblivion. The frozen landscape stretched out before Tenzin, a desolate and unforgiving wasteland. The jagged ice formations jutted up like skeletal fingers, reaching toward the dark, stormy sky. As he trudged through the snow, his mind strayed to thoughts of his lost companions, their faces haunting him with each step. Suddenly, a glimmer caught his eye, a mirage of his friend Maya, beckoning him toward a spire of ice in the distance. Driven by a desperate longing for any sign of life, he followed her shadowy figure into the depths of the tundra. The steeple pulsed with a ghostly glow, murmuring secrets that echoed through his numbed ears. Accusations and regrets floated on the air, plaguing him with guilt. Was it his hesitation that sealed their fate? Or was he too afraid to face the truth? The whispers were like icicles piercing his chest, etching a chilling image of his shortcomings. It was then that Tenzin realized he wasn't just a mere survivor. He was also responsible for ending lives. Each day bled into the next without distinction, a never-ending maze of agony and remorse. The once majestic mountain peaks mocked him with their beauty, a cruel reminder of the tragedy that had claimed his friends. Their voices echoed in the creaks of the glacier and howls of the wind, haunting him at every turn. One desolate morning, Tenzin stumbled upon the avalanche site. In the glaring light of day, the snow stood out in stark contrast to its previous role as a burial ground. Maya and Marley were frozen in time, their faces contorted with fear and agony. Tenzin could not help but see his reflection in the crystal-clear ice next to them, a constant reminder of his survivor's guilt. He realized then that he had not been a coward. He had fought with all his might to save his friends, but nature had mercilessly taken them, leaving him to bear the weight of their deaths. Tenzin was no longer just a survivor, but a prisoner trapped in the barren wasteland of his mind. The deep scars of trauma had taken root, twisting and distorting his very psyche until he was nothing more than a shattered reflection of his former self. Every thought became a razor-sharp blade, relentlessly cutting through what was left of his sanity. And every day was a grueling war, each step forward a brutal fight against an all-consuming quicksand that threatened to swallow him whole. Carly nestled into Jax's side, using his flannel shirt as a shield from the cold as the campfire crackled. The smell of burning pine filled the air until it was interrupted by the sound of a twig snapping in the distance. They both tensed up. "Did you hear that?" Carly whispered. Jax held her tighter as silence fell around them. Another snap sounded, closer this time. Leaves rustled and something moved in the darkness, just outside their circle of light. A low growl resonated through the night, causing Carly's heart to pound in fear. The growl intensified into a threatening snarl. A large beast emerged from the trees, its fur matted and saliva dripping from its sharp fangs. The putrid scent of decay wafted in the night air. "Stay still," Jax ordered quietly, his voice straining against her ear. The animal's eyes glowed in the dark as it bared its teeth menacingly. Jax reached for his camping knife just as the creature charged at them. Its claws shone under the dim light and its jaws snapped open and closed rapidly. Then everything went black. Carly woke with a start, having no recollection of what had happened, and smelling blood mixed with damp earth. She turned her head to see Jax lying next to her, severely injured. The beast growled again, followed by its hot breath on her neck, causing her to scramble backward until she found a sturdy branch nearby. Carly swung it at the beast as it lunged again. The branch hit its head with a dull thud, and it let out an anguished yelp. Carly stopped moving, listening intently. Drip, drip, drip. Warm liquid streamed down her arm, pooling in her clenched hand. She looked at the unmoving creature, its eyes wide with terror. Disgust overwhelmed her and she pulled back, losing her grip on something slippery. The smell of metal filled the air around the bloody mess staining her skin. Overwhelmed and convinced that Jax was dead, she sprinted into the night. Tree branches slapped against her face and roots threatened to trip her as she raced through the woods. Each breath was a painful gasp until finally, she reached a gravel road. Carly stopped, panting heavily. She listened. The sound of crickets chirping and the flow of a nearby stream was interrupted by the sound of rustling leaves. Turning quickly, she saw Jax limping toward her. "Leave me. Save yourself." His pale eyes met hers as he whispered, "Run." Another rustling came from beyond the thicket. Fear surged within Carly, but she didn't let it control her. There was no way she was leaving Jax. They would face whatever fate they had coming together. Carly ran back toward him, ignoring the pain in her muscles. She lifted him onto her shoulder, using her remaining strength and determination. They headed back to the gravel path. Each step hurt more than the last, but she wouldn't give up. Both their lives depended on it. "Stay awake," she urged each time she felt Jack's waver. The threatening drone of peril lessened as they moved further away. Carly felt the pulse pounding in her ears, sparking a blend of terror and defiance within her. Exhausted, she pushed aside the cries of fatigue from her weary muscles. The relentless wind howled around them, its icy blasts posing an additional hurdle. Yet they pushed on, fueled by the will to live and the pursuit of refuge. Slowly, a structure took shape in the distance, the park ranger's station. Its sight alleviated some of Carly's physical strain and mental exhaustion. They had endured a terrifying ordeal and lived to tell the tale. But what if their monstrous attacker wasn't dead? Or worse still, what if there were others like it lurking? Carly struggled with the decision of whether or not to inform the ranger about the strange creature they had encountered. After all, who would believe their story? It started as a perfect weekend getaway. 4 college buddies escaping the pressures of classes and loans by disappearing into the pristine wilderness. We pitched our tents near a gurgling stream, drank beer around the campfire, and reminisced about old times as the star-filled sky slowly dimmed to black. Little did we know that harrowing hell awaited us in those lonely woods. As the comforting warmth of the fire faded into dying embers, a thick blanket of darkness swallowed our campsite. The tranquil murmur of a nearby stream hummed a lullaby as we crawled into our tents for the night. My restful slumber was shattered by the unnerving sound of something scraping against the coarse material of my makeshift home. At first, I shrugged it off as some harmless forest creature. But when deep, strained breaths echoed outside, I realized we were sharing our space with something much larger and potentially threatening. A chill prickled my skin as the scraping grew more aggressive. A putrid scent of rotting meat forced its way into my nostrils. It was then I realized that we weren't alone. All other sounds fell away, except for the heart-stopping noise of ripping fabric. Our sanctuary had been violated. Moonlight poured through a ragged hole in the tent wall, highlighting an enormous snout intruding inside. The beast's jaws yawned open to reveal rows of sharp teeth glistening with saliva. It lunged before I could react, its colossal weight pressing me down onto the hard ground beneath. This wasn't any bear. Its body was armored in dark skin pulled tight over bulging muscles and covered with sharp quills. I writhed beneath it as it lowered its face toward mine, one eye gleaming menacingly while the other socket lay empty and hollow. The terrified cries of my friends pierced the night as their tents too succumbed to similar assaults. I seized the momentary distraction, screaming until the creature recoiled and roared in response. It stood on its hind legs, showing off writhing appendages sticking out from its throat. Using all my remaining strength, I kicked at its empty eye socket, hitting something that felt like a poisonous stinger. The monster jerked violently, and then ran into the forest. We didn't hesitate, rushing in the opposite direction and further into the woods. However, we could hear the echo of its heavy steps right behind us somehow. A glance over my shoulder revealed a large shadow doggedly chasing us. Suddenly, 2 pouches opened up from its throat, glowing eerily in the moonlight with sharp hooks protruding out. What the hell was this thing? We stumbled and fell into a narrow ditch just as it was about to pounce on us. The pouches on its throat swelled up, revealing numerous eyes blinking from within the pulsating flesh. In that horrifying moment, I realized this wasn't just an ordinary beast, but a smart monstrosity that had emerged from some unknown depth. As it stretched out the appendages from its drooling mouth, I closed my eyes, accepting our imminent end. We were too far into the woods for any chance of rescue. Our cries would never be heard, and it was a real possibility that our bodies would never be found. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. See you next time. Thank you for watching.